This is Michael Smook for YouTube Commentaries, episode 14. This is part 2. We needed to take a break for a little while, and now I'm back. The topic of today's conversation is what I believe. Today is March 25th. It's 2017, and it's a Saturday. I wanted to just point out something to you. I had some time to think during this break. Let me just make something very clear. Contrary to what the president at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who occupies the White House, this is my opinion. America is already great. However, we still have work to do. And now that I've also had some time to think about it, let's go back and talk about my politics, and then we'll talk about my hopes for the future. In terms of my politics, in the previous discussion, I was talking about the two concepts that overlap each other, complement each other, and are sometimes in conflict with each other. I'm talking about economic justice and social justice. And let me break it down to a very elementary level. This is a dollar bill, okay? And let me point out what the conflict is with economic justice and social justice. This is the thing. If you give a dollar to somebody, let's say they're middle class, perhaps they're low income, what do they do with it? Do they invest it in the stock market? Do they buy a home? Do they save for their family? Do they buy food? Or should that dollar go to the state or federal government, and they will have a program, it's passed by legislation, and that money will be recycled back out to take care of a societal need that has not been paid attention to. So that's the conflict there. Do you give it directly to individuals and let them spend it, or do the people, they tell their politicians what government should do, government creates a program, and then government does it. So there's a tension there, and it's ongoing, and it's stressful, and we're going to be arguing about this for hundreds of years from now. But I wanted to just give you a very elementary level explanation as to fighting over just a $1 bill. Now, let's go back to my hopes for the future, and I was talking about channeling my inner biblical Joseph. The fact is that every 5 to 10 years in this country, we have a recession. Sometimes we have a severe economic downturn. It's called a depression. So that's why I think we need to go back 3,000 and 4,000 years ago and channel our inner biblical Joseph. So the reason why there was a change from the Democrat to the Republican in the White House is that some middle class people voted for the Republican because they don't feel middle class anymore. So I think what the United States needs to do, and I have a 3-point analysis which I'm going to do for you rather succinctly, is that we need to strengthen the middle class, and we need to expand it to include low-income folks. Let's create win-win situations where everybody wins, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, political creed, sexual orientation, and all the rest. Let's create a system whereby we take the existing free market capitalist system, improve it so everybody wins. We create a win-win situations. So for starters, we have much to be thankful for. The United States is 5% of the world's population. We're 25% of the economic output. We generate $20 billion a year of goods and services. So China's population is 4 times the size of the United States, but their economic output is 60% of the United States. So we're doing a lot of things right in this country. The thing is that over the last 7-8 years, since we fell into a deep, severe economic decline, the United States has come back, but the growth hasn't been fast enough. So at the same time, we have an economic engine which is still the most potent economy in the world. We need to do 2 things. The first thing is that one of the criticisms our president made when he was running for office was we need to toss aside the North American Free Trade Agreement. And he raises an interesting point. I think it's a 25-year-old trade agreement that benefits Canada, Mexico, and the United States. So his criticism raises a question. Maybe we need, it's 25 years old trade agreement. It's really a treaty, but we call it a trade agreement. We call it a trade agreement because it's easier to get it passed through Congress when you use that terminology. But the thing is, maybe what we need to do is within the United States and then with our trading partners in Canada and Mexico, maybe we need to think the agreement, make some changes, make the modifications, and we could create win-win situations that could help all our nations and businesses within the nation and our workers within the United States. So I'm thinking we need to perhaps revise the North American Free Trade Agreement. Let's not toss it out. The second thing is another way to expand the economic pie and to revitalize the economy. At some point, the United States needs to walk back its rejection of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the United States needs to rethink that maybe this is a good agreement to have. Our new trading partners, Vietnam, remember them? We were in a war with them 50, 60 years ago. They're eager to enhance trade relations with the United States. And our existing allies, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Latin American countries bordering the Pacific, everybody wants to do trade with the United States. And so that's why I think that will reinvigorate the economy, and I think we need to walk it back and reconsider it. We don't have enough time, but in another discussion, we could talk about a third trade agreement. It's not even an agreement on Congress's agenda, but it's something we should think about. It's the Asia Development Bank, founded by China, which is a counterweight to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And that might help manage our relationship with China and also help the economic well-being of Pacific nations. But we don't have enough time to go into too much detail about that. But suffice to say is that free trade agreements, I believe, if they're well-crafted and well-implemented, free trade agreements could expand the economic pie and create win-win situations for the United States, our trading partners, and some countries that sometimes are our rivals. We can create win-win situations. If there's economic prosperity, there's a better chance of wars breaking out. Also, I'm not immune to the concerns and of people in states like Indiana and West Virginia. Indiana, they're very proud of Carrier air conditioner, and at least part of the business, or a good part of it, is leaving Indiana and going to Mexico so they could build and assemble air conditioners. In West Virginia, coal, there are a lot of coal miners out of work. So these states, among a number of states, people are hurting, and they're upset about trade, and they point the finger at international trade. And and it's popular to criticize trade agreements, but the real reason that jobs might have been eliminated stems from the fact that we're so efficient in our manufacturing. We've computerized a lot of manufacturing plants, so you only need a fraction of the amount of people to make steel. And also, I think what the United States needs to do, and this may assuage the concerns of our fellow American citizens in Indiana and West Virginia, what the United States needs to do is we need to engage in an infrastructure rebuilding process. And I'm not just talking about 4 years or 8 years, which could be one president's administration. I'm talking about a process that could last for decades. There are trillions of dollars of infrastructure that needs to be built, rebuilt, or created. We're starting with roads, bridges, and lead-laced pipes in places like Flint, Michigan. And I'm thinking this. The American people believe in the federal government's ability to create and pay for and maintain, train an army, navy, the military. So we believe in our military. We also believe in the federal government's ability to cut Social Security's checks. Thirdly, we believe in the federal government's ability to contract out with insurance companies and process Medicare checks to pay for doctors, hospitals, and all of the healthcare providers. So what the American people have forgotten is that 70 and 80 years ago, under the New Deal, under Franklin Roosevelt, the United States was able to build roads, bridges, hospitals, theaters, facilities and parks, plant 3 billion trees, build dams like the Hoover Dam, build the Tennessee Valley Authority. So I think that the American people need to be reintroduced to the fact that the federal government either directly providing services or collaborating with the states and or working in conjunction with private businesses, competitive sealed bids, sole source contracts, we could partner with private industries. So I think the United States needs to think in terms of an infrastructure rebuilding process to rebuild America. And sure, we should do what we can to persuade Carrier Air Conditioner to stay in the United States. But if we can't, let's not get crazy about this. Let's not get too upset. There will be jobs, there'll be a channel to create jobs, to strengthen the middle class, and to put people to work. And it's all about what we call logistics, and the devil is in the details. So the thing about this is, and what I'm talking about is that I think we should start small with pilot projects, and when these projects to rebuild roads, bridges, and let's say lead-laced pipes, maybe in the future it'll be mass transportation, solar energy, and other things. But I think what the United States needs to do is start small, take corrective actions when things aren't working well, establish best practices for future endeavors, publicize what's going on so the American people see that government works and they see that their tax dollars are being recycled to pay for things that make America a better place for 50, 100, and 200 years from now. So let's think small and then go robust. How do we raise the money? A friend of mine who votes Republican and says, well, we can't afford to do that. And I hate to use double negatives, but my response to him was, and I didn't say much and for very long, but I said, we can't afford not to do these things. And the reason why I think an infrastructure rebuilding process is terribly, terribly important is because I'm channeling my inner biblical Joseph who saved Egypt from famine because Egypt had 7 years of bounty and 7 years of famine, and he was able to save the Empire of Egypt with what he did 3,000 and 4,000 years ago. Well, we've about just covered it all. We've covered my philosophy. We've covered about how it impacts on my choice of a career, on my politics, and on a 3-point plan I've outlined for America's future to re-energize the economy, expand the middle class, and strengthen the middle class and expand it to reach out to low-income people. This is Michael Smook for YouTube Commentaries. The topic of today's conversation is what I believe, and until next time, goodbye and good luck.